Chicago.
Black and Right continues on AM 560. Once again, here's John Anthony.
Welcome back to Black and Right on AM 560 The Answer. I'm your host, John Anthony, live in studio with the hit band and the catastrophe. Woo! That's a dynamite combination.
Boom.
Patrick, Brutus, and Kay Winding. That was a very good first segment. You know.
WMD.
Oh, boom.
The weapon of destruction.
You know, we've been talking about, you know, the stimulus, the 1.9 trillion. Hoff Daddy, can you play that audio clip? It's like, where are we? Is this still America?
You know, you've often heard me say before, I talk about the longest walk any parent can make is up a short flight of stairs to his child's bedroom to say, I'm sorry, I lost my job. Can't be here anymore. Like my dad told me when he lost his job in Scranton. So many of you have had to make that same walk this past year. You lost your job. You closed your business, facing eviction, homelessness, hunger, a loss of control.
Wow.
You know, you've often heard me say,
a loss of control. How do we get to this point? We got to this point because we had dictators in local governments and states bringing complete annihilation to our states and to our local municipalities. And the other night, I spoke about, I was speaking in Clay County, and I had the privilege of sitting with Congresswoman Mary Miller and her husband, State Representative Chris Miller. And I said, we talked, and then her and I have been trading social media messages. And I said, I got to have you on Saturday because you were there. You know, you were there in the midst. I'm sure most of the people who the stimulus, they didn't even read the bill. Joining us right now is Congresswoman Mary Miller, who represents the 15th Congressional District. How are you doing, Congresswoman?
I'm doing great. Thank you, John, for having me on. But I do want to clarify, thank you for addressing me as Congresswoman, but I am a citizen representative.
Oh, I love it.
And I believe our founding fathers intended for us not to have all career politicians and lawyers representing us. So I'm coming from the farm. I'm a mom and a grandma and an educator, and I'm going to fight this. It's everything they're doing out there is radical.
Wow.
Congratulations. I love that approach.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that approach. And then when you're done, you'll go back home and let somebody else lead. That's wonderful.
Exactly.
The citizen actually serves and then goes back home.
Yes.
And doesn't make a career.
She said a citizen representative.
I love it.
I love it. So Citizen Representative Miller, this is Mark Anthony talking to you. I'm sorry.
I can tell.
What's actually in this monstrosity of a 1.9 trillion with a T stimulus bill?
Well, first of all, it's definitely not a stimulus bill. I think just the titles of the bills that they're ramming through show what liars and hypocrites they are. It's not COVID relief. It's not going to stimulate our economy. We're calling it Pelosi's payoff to progressives. It's $1.9 trillion.
Wow.
We still have $1 trillion that's not spent of COVID money, but of this $1.9 trillion, only 9% is going to go to anything related to COVID, and 1% to the vaccine. It's a total sham. All I can say is they have opened the coffers and they are throwing money into the wind. And, you know, here our debt is nearing $30 trillion, which I really don't think most of us can wrap our minds around that. But I am so concerned about what we're leaving our children and grandchildren. And the Democrats are leaving the Republicans out of debates out there. They've rejected every amendment that we offered, which would have brought some kind of accountability to this.
Wow.
And, you know, I'm on the Education and Labor Committee, and during our markup, I actually offered an amendment which would allow parents whose students are not allowed, they are not being offered in-person classes right now, to take their federal funding elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I added up, this proposal is going to give schools another $129 billion. And then last spring they got $13.2 billion in the CARES Act and $54 billion in December's bipartisan splurge.
And the thing
that's
here is
$194 billion without requiring schools to have in-person classes. 43% of American children are still not in school, and that just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And actually, I sat on the airplane next to a woman from Arlington, Virginia. She has 7 children like me, and she said in Arlington, their schools still are not open. And she has 5 boys and then 2 girls. She said it has been a disaster. Her 4 older boys are all flunking. She said her older son was a straight-A student, and he is flunking.
Wow. If you
but
just
it
joined
is
us,
just not working.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Citizen Representative Mary Miller, who's joined the show. Go ahead, Patrick.
Congressman, you laid out a lot of poison pills in this bill, and I know our listeners appreciate it. I'm Patrick Burtis. I also ran for Congress twice as a Democrat in the Chicago area, and I'm glad that you won. And you actually, yes, thank you. You actually have peeled the onion on this bill, and you've exposed it as a scam, as a sham, and what I want you to talk about, if you could, one, we get back to education. It's very important that all this money is going toward education, and unfortunately, our schools are still not open. But also lay out a little bit of the timeline of the money being actually put into this bill, that it doesn't all pay out in this fiscal year. This is a bill that will pay out indefinitely, and this is another way the Democrats have secured pipeline for payoffs for an extended period of time, and our country can't afford to continue to do business this way. What do you say to the people about that, Rep?
Okay. Well, it's just bottom line, it is such an insult to all hardworking taxpayers. And in light of course, I'm on the Education and Labor Committee. I do know that the major portion of the money the schools are being given will not be spent in 2021. Wow. Like this is supposed to be emergency relief, right. COVID payoff. It's going to be spent in 2022 and beyond, and it's fungible, which means they can use it for whatever. Yeah. And there's just such a lack of accountability with this. There's so much here. It's welfare expansion. It's millions for like National Endowment for Arts. We're giving $13 billion. That's billion with a B for foreign assistance. Oh, yeah. And of course, we're bailing out Illinois, left out because Illinois, California, New York, Chicago are being bailed out.
Yeah. And Congresswoman, we're sending $1.8 billion to the Chicago Public Schools with no reforms, no efficiency requirements. Just, hey, here's $1.8 billion. Do as you please with it.
Well, the CEO got a raise.
So presumably with no restrictions and this money being unrestricted, that really opens the door for a lot of potential more malfeasance.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So,
but not only that, not to interrupt you, Congresswoman Miller.
Go ahead.
But just to add to that, like right now, our students, Chicago Public School, they've been home, remote learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would think as much money as they received, every student should have been provided a laptop.
Right.
Every student should have been provided a laptop, but they weren't.
Wow.
So what are you doing with all this money besides giving yourself
Well, they're paying off the
raise?
pensions and all that. But Congressman Miller, I also want to give you save reserve time for you. You introduced the bill. Do you mind explaining what the bill was that you just recently introduced?
Sure. Well, last month, the Democrats passed the Equality Act. Here again, we have another bill which is hypocritical in the title. So it should be called the Inequality Act. The one group that's being left out of what they're doing out there is anybody that holds traditional American values. So this bill is going to force schools, both public and private, churches, hospitals, businesses, and other institutions to recognize the individual's chosen gender instead of their biological sex.
Wow.
So as a result, women and girls are going to be forced to share bathrooms, locker rooms, showers in women's shelters.
Wow.
They're going to have to allow biological men who identify as women in. It's going to affect adoption and foster agencies. They're either going to be forced to abandon their beliefs or they're going to have to shut down. So, and then also,
You got
very
15
egregiously,
seconds.
it's going to affect girls' athletics. So I introduced a bill called the Safety and Opportunity for Girls Act that creates a clear definition of sex based on biology and genetics.
Yeah. Well, Congresswoman, where can people find you? Because I think there are a lot of people that might be interested in this bill. Where can people follow you and all those things?
Well, they can go to my Facebook, Congresswoman Mary Miller, or I've got a Twitter account and Instagram also.
Congresswoman Mary Miller, thanks so much for joining Black and Right. You know you're more than welcome here. Citizen representative, I forgot. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
All right, no problem. You're listening to Black and Right on AM 560 Answer. I'm John Anthony. We'll be right back.
Fox News, I'm Roger Stern.